Welcome to another episode of the Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Magnus Olsen, and joining me today is co-host and founder of Full Spectrum Education, Mr. Ben Ma. Welcome, mate.
Hey, mate. How you doing?
Good, good. Today we're sitting down with a man who's quietly shaped the growth of hundreds of businesses across Australia and New Zealand. Paul Kennedy is the founder of PGV Consulting, a strategist, advisor and connector who's helped turn ideas into scalable, profitable companies for almost 2 decades. He understands growth, he understands people, and he understands what it truly takes to build a business that lasts. Paul, welcome to the Founder Podcast.
Hello, Magnus. Thanks very much. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
To kick us off, PGV, what's that stand for our listeners?
Thank you. It was decided over some very cheap bottles of wine, and somebody said to me, well, it needs to be a one-liner, and it needs to be clear what it stands for, and it needs to not have been used before. And I thought, oh, God, this is going to be tricky. So I thought, well, what am I about? I'm about planning. I'm about growth. I'm about adding value. So when we got to about the 7th bottle of a cheap $5 red wine, we came up with PGV. So that's it.
Can you just share with us briefly your professional journey and how you came about realising there was a gap of the market that obviously led you to start your own business?
You're probably being a bit generous in terms of saying, how did I come to realise it? I'm not sure I did. My background, I'm an accountant by background, and I worked in corporates, large corporates. This is back in New Zealand, which is my home country. And so I had that background, the finance, the accounting, and I enjoyed it. Probably stayed doing that too long, to be honest, because as much as I liked accounting and numbers, I found I liked people even more than numbers. And that then led me, I was fortunate, I had quite a career change. I moved from accounting, being a CFO of a publicly listed company in New Zealand, to a strategic planning role. And the difference between, say, an accountant and a strategic planner is an accountant is typically we're looking backwards, whereas a strategic planner is looking forward. So I was hopefully able to use that earlier background. I'll never regret qualifying as an accountant and that being the early part of my career. But I really enjoyed the next part, which was looking forward, like what could be as opposed to what was or what had happened. And I was working for a large company in New Zealand, funds management in the financial services sector. And that took me into opportunities that would never have occurred if I'd remained as an accountant. And during that role, it was around doing the strategic plan for the company. And we spotted a particular opportunity, and we ended up buying this company. And at the end of it, the senior management at the company said, well, you thought it was such a good idea, you run it. And I was so lucky because I had this blueprint, having written the board papers, as to what we were doing and more particularly why we were doing it. I then had this roadmap basically of what to do. So all of a sudden this ex-accountant strategic planner had to actually get out there and do some selling, business development, winning new clients. And that's what we did. And so that was really the journey. Accountant by background, hopefully some financial nous, strategic planning being a bit more creative, looking at not what was but what could be. And then the actual, now that we're doing it, let's get on and earn some money.
So in terms of like an entrepreneurial analysis of an idea, what would you think someone's first step should be in terms of like, okay, I've got an idea, I want to do it. Before they put time into it, how would you advise they evaluate that?
Right. And just on what I explained in the last few minutes, we did that research in terms of, is it a good market to be in? Do we think we've got some special skills? So I did do quite a bit of that actually, Ben, research and really drilling down as to what we were looking at doing. But it wasn't so much what we were doing, it was why we were doing it. And I'll try and stress that bit about why, and hopefully I'll manage to drop Simon Sinek's name in there somewhere, because I think he's on the right track. Start with why, not so what do you do? Why do you do what you do? That caused us to do a lot of drilling down, Ben, as to why we might want to buy this particular company. And anyway, we went through that process. There was negotiation, a lot of toing and froing, and eventually we put the deal together. And we ended up owning this company. And as I say, that's when the chief executive said to me, well, you thought it was such a good idea, you run it. So all of a sudden I had to prove that what I'd written in a mere board paper was actually achievable.
But it was almost a strategy to a certain degree, wasn't it? Because you'd built the plan.
Again, you're crediting me too generously there. I'm not sure I saw it that way at the time, but I did at the time. I did look back and think this is such a gift because, as I say, we knew the reason why we were doing it. We knew where our target markets were. It was an insurance company that I worked for, an insurance, superannuation, funds management. They were across all of that, a large organisation. And the buying of this company, it was a trustee company. And trustees, I'll begin to lose your audience here, their eyes will glaze over, but trustees are in two completely different fields. One is corporate, could be around superannuation, could be around managed investment schemes, but on the other hand, on the personal side, it's around wills, estates, enduring powers of attorney. So you have two very distinct markets, one corporate, one personal. And from the parent company, the company that I worked for, they actually served people in both of those markets. So it was the perfect way of growing the overall business by being able to take them into both the corporate market and also into the personal market. And I mean, just using that as an example, if you had a client who perhaps an individual had an insurance policy with you and they passed away, all of a sudden you're no longer dealing with the deceased, but you're dealing with their family. And if you're able to offer services that are of interest to them going forward, they've got the insurance money, they need to do something with it. So there were opportunities there to keep the money within the firm and do the right thing by our clients and our members.
Yeah, look, I think from my perspective, like as an entrepreneur, like what's the, like I want to go back to my question before. So I get all that. Because obviously we met through your ability to introduce and meet people. So if people are looking to get out there, and I'm going a little bit rogue from our questions today, but I really just want to ask you this question because it's something that I feel a lot of people struggle with in entrepreneurship. Like say you've got the business concept, right? You know what you want to do. You've got all the strategic, you've got all the strategy, the finance adds up. What would you advise someone does in terms of meeting the right people to interact with? Because quite often a lot of people in business, they don't know who they need to meet, you know, and then they actually meet just quite an array of people, but some are relevant, some aren't. Just your thoughts on that.
Sure, and look, absolutely correct, Ben. I was probably a bit fortunate, as I was saying to Magnus before we got underway. Although I'm an accountant, I actually enjoy people even more. So I do enjoy meeting people. And I like networking, I'm social, I'm out there. To be blunt, I go for the drinks and the canapes and the people I meet. And that one thing just leads to another. And that's another thing I believe, create the opportunity by getting out there. Can I tell you a quick story that might perhaps try and answer yours, Ben?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm currently working in a situation where I've been approached by somebody I've worked with previously, an accountant, and he has a client, and that client is looking for a firm to audit the client. And I know lots of people across all sorts of industries, including auditors, and I identified a number of people in my database who I thought could take on this role of the auditor that the client was looking to do. So I identified them, I prepared an intro email that explains what we were doing, I gave some background about the company, and I sent that email off today. And this morning I received a phone call from one of those parties that I wrote to. I hadn't actually met this fellow, I knew another person at his firm, but the guy who rang me was the right person. And during the conversation we exchanged a little bit about each other, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, wow, okay. Well, that's interesting as to what you do." He said, "Look, so we are interested. We would like to tender for this work. And in the new year, Paul, could we catch up for a coffee? I'd like to learn a bit more about what you do and see if there are other areas where we may be able to work together." The point I'm trying to get to there is just by getting out there, other things will happen. I'm a great believer in that. Create the opportunity.
That's so true. And for somebody starting a new business, what should the business look like in the first couple of years, and how important is social media and marketing for a new business, just dealing with founders?
Yes. I'd begin with the business and marketing plan, and I guess that's part of where I come from, the strategic planning side. I'm very much a believer of really you have to know who your ideal clients currently are, who you would like them to be, and who they could be. And there are 3 different questions in there. And moving from who they currently are to who you'd like them to be to who they could be, there are various steps and initiatives along the way that will open those opportunities up. I think a mantra that I live by is business nirvana is when your ideal clients seek you out. So if somebody says to me, so what should be in a business and marketing plan? And that's kind of, I think, what your question was, say, for the first 2 years of a founder. And I would say, well, almost anything that will take you towards that end goal, where you have business nirvana of your ideal clients seeking you out. And how do you do that? You do that by, first of all, identifying who you believe are your ideal clients, asking them what they want, not what you want to deliver, and then telling people what you do, and not in a boring way. Tell stories, give examples of work you've done with a particular client, what their issue was, what you did, and what the outcome was. And my reason for that is that turn everybody you know into your unpaid BDM, your unpaid business development manager, your ambassador. And in fact, that is exactly how you and I met, Ben, because you were talking to somebody who I know and who you know, but you and I didn't know each other. When she learned about what you do, she said, oh, you should talk to Paul Kennedy. And that's where we are today. So there's another example of just create the opportunity. And people you know, let them know what you do. By the way, also listen to what they do too. That's another thing. Listen to what they do, not just what you do, and see if you can make the connection. And here we are.
Well, let me just share something quick on that. So, centers of influence is what you're obviously talking about. It's very, very important. Let me just share a quick little story about that. So, absolutely you're right. So, Ruth, who you met from, Ruth was the one that introduced.
It was, yes.
Yes, from Sunrise Well. We had Ruth on the podcast, and Magnus and Ruth really hit it off as well. So, but as an example of the centers of influence having real impact, so we had, the head of the Activate program, Justin Hodges, one of our ambassadors, Carmichael Hunt, and then Magnus here speak to one of our other community ambassadors, speak to a school, right? And about, basically about chasing your dreams, having a go, resilience, their journey as well, their individualistic journeys. And look, something to share about that is like, if Magnus hadn't have been willing to do that community work for us, the kids from Burpengary State Secondary College wouldn't have been motivated that day because we put the feedback out. And, Magnus is a very humble person, but as an example, like Justin and Carmichael did a great job. They're obviously famous people here in Australia, and Magnus blew them out of the water. The kids wanted Magnus back. They wanted to hear from Magnus. They wanted to hear about his journey. Why? Because they had a real affinity with his personal story around his trade background and how he's a qualified builder and all of the other things he does. He's a helicopter pilot, and they just love the way he lived life.
Yes.
And I think it was cool because, like, you talk about individual choices, you talk about daily behaviours, which actually links to the next question I'm going to ask you. So in terms of like businesses, you've obviously worked with a lot of people. What do you think helps people move their business forward versus staying stuck? Like, what's your personal, for our listeners who are listening to this and they go, I'm moving forward or I'm stuck, what do you think is the difference maker for businesses to move forward?
Right. Look, in many of these questions, I suspect I'm going to give a similar answer. Everything comes back to, so who are your ideal clients and where are they? Surround yourself with your ideal clients. Find out what their pain points are. Not only their pain points, what their opportunities are as well. And be the solution to either those pain points or their opportunities. Be the one that can solve that issue for them. And in my case, I'm fortunate because it's mainly around growing the business, which is your question, as opposed to some problem that needs to be addressed. It's more, in my case, I'm fortunate, they tend to be mainly positive going forward, growing strategy, as opposed to defensive, recovering from a disaster. So really drill down on who your ideal clients are, where they are, and how do you meet with them, how do you mix with them, listen to their story, find out about them, what are their issues, what are their opportunities.
That's very, very well said, because it's interesting. A lot of people, they sit there and they think this is the problem and this is what I've got to go at, and then they go and build a big program and then they go to try and sell. Whereas you reverse engineer it, what you're saying, go to the companies, you go, what are your pain points, what are your problems, and then you develop a program that's going to solve that problem.
And Magnus, I'm so guilty of that. I've done, and that's
look, we all have.
I'm a lot older than you guys, so trust me, I've made every mistake possible, and I'm still making them. That's another point I'd perhaps like to just touch on, and that is I learn far more from the mistakes I've made than from all the things that went right, and I think that's true of all of us. So yeah, I just encourage people to get out there, do things, and other stuff will happen. When I started PGV, I thought I knew what my clients wanted, but it was interesting. As time unfolded, I found they actually wanted not dramatically different, but a bit of a tilt of a difference, and I had to readjust, because it's not about what I want, it's about what they want, and equally. An ideal client, by the way, I've got a couple of one-liners here. An ideal client is somebody who needs and wants whatever it is you do or whatever you provide. They are also somebody who values, respects, and acts on your advice. And thirdly, they have to be somebody who is both willing and able to pay your fee. Yeah. And ideally, you want the person you're dealing with to be somebody who ticks all of those three boxes. Again, that's a mistake I made, where I would spend so much time, and I enjoyed it because I like helping people, but often they would tick two of the three boxes. Invariably, the one they didn't tick was either a willingness or an ability to pay. So, but I still liked getting involved and helping people, and I still do lots of that.
I've made that mistake a number of times too, but there's if you're able to find some clients that tick all three boxes,
yes,
then you can still go off and help a few people that tick the first two boxes then in more of a philanthropist type way. In your strategic planning that we've been talking about, what do you think the most overlooked element is that you found with people when they're developing their strategic plan? What do they miss?
Probably that they don't know who their ideal clients are. They don't know what they want. I think also once you've moved beyond that, it comes back to customer service, delivering more than what they were expecting, do something extra, something that pleasantly surprises them. And that kind of gels back to a comment I made before about turning everybody you know into your unpaid business development manager, your ambassador. If you do those other little things, that little bit extra, or you did something that they weren't expecting and they were, as the transaction was completed, as they looked, they thought, oh, God, that's actually better than I'd even hoped. Then they will, by default, become your unpaid BDM. They will talk to other people about what you do and how you solved a problem for them.
That's probably the biggest mistake, actually, now that we're talking about it, that I've seen businesses make. They come up with the plan, but then it's the execution of that plan, and quite often you take on too much and then you're under-delivering. And then you've made all these vast promises, obviously you've come up, you're full of beans, you're full of energy, you promise the world to everybody, but then under-delivering, and that can be something that's difficult to recover from sometimes.
Agreed. And something else that I've noticed, and look, all of these comments I'm making, the last thing I want to do is give the impression, well, he seems to think he knows it all. I don't, because I am still making the same mistakes today, but hopefully I'm learning. Right, coming back to your point, Magnus, what it is it's the day-to-day living of the plan, the actual writing of the plan, the writing of the proposal, whatever it is. That's the easy bit. Anybody can write the words, but it's the actual day-to-day living of those words, the living of the plan. And that's something I think we all need to, every morning when we wake up, just bring ourselves back into alignment with what was that plan? Am I doing it? Is it serving me? Is it serving my clients?
Yeah. Action is a big thing, isn't it? Obviously, I spent a little bit of time in the the health and wellness field, and that's interesting there as well. People have got the best intentions. We can all go up and join up at the gym. We can get the program. We can go and buy the new trainers. But if you're not actually getting up and going for a run or physically turning up at the gym and actually doing something, then there's no point. So there's that balancing act, isn't it?
Absolutely. And also procrastination. That's something I suffer from. I have the best will in the world, a bit about getting up and going to the gym. My doctor last year, I'm carrying a bit too much weight. She said, "Oh, Paul, I think you might benefit by going to the gym." Now, the gym in our case is a YMCA. It happens to be 100 metres up the road from where we live. So when my doctor recommended this, I went out onto Facebook and I said to my Facebook friends, "Look, this is a story. My doctor's recommended I do this. I've enrolled. My question is this. The gymnasium, the YMCA, is 100 metres away from our house. Should I drive or get an Uber?" So, and it's that day-to-day getting up and sticking to it. Something I've been doing recently, a friend of mine introduced me to it, is a thing called Park Run. Are you familiar with Park Run?
Very, very familiar with Park Run. I think it's an absolutely brilliant incentive that is going off across the country and across the world.
Absolutely, yes. And so look, I was introduced to it about 1.5 years ago by a friend, and I've been almost every Saturday, 7 o'clock start, out our way is in the western suburbs here in Brisbane, and you wouldn't believe it. Over 500 people every Saturday morning turn up at 7 a.m. and they do their 5 kilometres. They either run it, they jog it, they walk it, they crawl it, whatever. The other thing I've found is just the community spirit. It's really good. And again, just comes back again to what I was saying before about create the opportunity. Get out there, meet people. Other stuff happens when you meet other people, talk to people, listen to them, and hear what their situations are.
Yeah, that's just absolutely great advice. Not just business advice, but great life advice.
You just raised another issue there for me in terms of business advice versus personal advice, and that's coming back to a business and marketing plan, something I believe in, and that is that if you're setting up a business, you're an entrepreneur or a business person, self-employed, and you've got this idea, then create that plan. If you have a team of people, involve them in it as well, in the development of it and the implementation. Make sure that your business goals are aligned to your personal goals. And finally, if you have a partner, involve them in it as well and run it by them. So get them on board, and just what other people, whether they be other members of your team or your partner, they can see things from a different perspective. The other thing is they know us too well. So when you write things down on a piece of paper and you say, well, I'm going to do this, go to the gym 7 days a week, and your wife looks at you and says, well, you and I both know you're not going to do that. And you do need that person who can bring that other perspective and add that balance back into it. So the point I'm trying to get to there is make sure that your business goals are aligned with your personal goals, because if they don't, something is going to come unstuck. And also, if you have a team of people you're working with, seek their input, not only in the development of it, but also in the implementation. And if you've involved them in the development of the plan, then they will feel a far greater alignment and commitment to actually achieving it. And same with your partner.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because I completely agree with the business plan and it's got to agree with your personal. I look at that from the perspective of values. So I've got my own personal values, and then those personal values are also then forming part of the business values, because those are the values that you're living regardless. And it's not just a bunch of business values that you put down on a piece of paper, which might be an ideal, you want to put them on a plaque, but you're not living them.
Absolutely. And in fact, if that's the case, if you get yourself into that scenario, then even if you're successful in the business, you're not going to be happy.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then what's the point? There's no enthusiasm, there's no passion.
So I guess for early stage founders who are looking to build momentum, and this conversation is probably a little bit overwhelming for them? Because obviously all of us here are, reasonably experienced. So for anyone who's like at the start, what would be, some advice you might give to them for anyone with like a limited network or anything like that?
Sure. So it depends on the business. If it's a service or a product, there are perhaps different answers. I'd probably start local. There are lots of business networking groups. Be careful about joining any business group. Think again, I come back to the bit about your ideal client. Think of who's going to be at these events. It could be Chamber of Commerce, it could be BNI, it could be BX, or a whole lot of them. And think of the people who are going to be there, and are they the people who can take your business to where you want it to go? And even if they're not directly, maybe they know people who know people. So again, it can be an introducer to an introducer. So it doesn't have to be a client. It could be somebody who's really good at referring. So I think starting out, Ben, that's what I would advise. And I'd probably, supposing you're a tradie, you presumably want to operate reasonably local. You don't want to be travelling all over from one side of the city to the other. So get involved in networks in and around where you are based.
So just off the back of that, what are some of the non-negotiable traits you think? So to be successful founder, successful business person, what are some of the traits that you must have?
Drive, belief, passion, integrity, customer service, leaving the customer, the client, delighted when you've driven away. I think that often doesn't happen. People might go in and perhaps sticking with somebody who's a tradie, but it could apply equally in the professional services. I think before you drive away, just pause for a second and have a look and say, am I leaving this the way that I would want it left if I was the client? Take a walk around. If it's a tradie situation, take a walk around and see, have I tidied up and left it so that they're not going to think, well, yeah, she did the job or he did the job, but they've left a bit of a mess. And so I think you just want to leave your clients with a really good taste in your mouth. And again, that just flows back to the other comment I made about they will then become your advertisers. You talked about social media, and I didn't answer that, Ben. But in many ways, you perhaps don't need to always do social media. If you've got enough people out there who are singing your praises about you behind your back, I always think that's a great approach. Find out what people are saying about you behind your back. And if there are some problems there, then address those so that what people say about you behind your back, you'd be proud of and pleased with.
So true. And as an ex-tradie, I can completely relate to your analogy.
So when you meet someone who's a little bit overwhelmed, if they've founded a company, whatever it may, an idea, whatever it may be, what do you usually tell them, or where do you tell them to start working through that problem?
Right. I learn so much from other people. People could be in that position. And coming back to your point too, Magnus, I learn a lot from tradies. I learn I'm hopeless at that sort of thing, absolutely hopeless. If I come back again, I'd really like to come back as somebody who's useful in a trade. I think it's such a good thing. I think often they don't believe that themselves, and I really encourage them to feel so positive about what they're doing, whether it be an electrician, a plumber, a hairdresser, whatever. I just be proud of what you're doing and be proud of the quality of what you are bringing your clients. Coming to yours again, if it's you're starting out and if you're local, just do the things we talked about before, the customer service, get out, meet people, tell them what you do. Tell little stories, short stories. That's where I have a problem telling short stories. My stories tend to be too long. But just have a series of short stories of when somebody says, oh, so Magnus, Ben, what do you do? Say, well, you know when, and tell a short story about something that where you had a client who had a particular situation and what you saw as the solution and what you were able to do for them. If you do that, you actually are arming those people, your army of unpaid BDMs, with a story that they can then pass on to somebody else they're talking to when they hear somebody raise an issue. They're at a football match, they're at their daughter's hockey match, and somebody's saying, oh, how's things going? And the person you're talking to raises a problem they've got or an opportunity. And if you've given them a few little stories about situations you've been in and you've been able to help your clients with, they will enjoy sharing that with the person they're now talking to.
We all love a good story, don't we? If you had to rebuild PGV Consulting from scratch today, what would you do differently?
Right, confession time. So, I told you before I'm an accountant by background. You might have thought that therefore I was pretty good around systems and processes, and I should be, but looking back, I was probably so enthusiastic to get out and start selling what PGV was about that I didn't put all those systems and processes in place. Also, I'd come from a background where I'd been an accountant for a long time, and to be blunt, I was a bit over it. And the idea of doing all that paperwork or the administration or the accounting or whatever, Excel spreadsheets, held zero appeal to me. So I let it lag, and I thought, oh, I'm an accountant, I'll be able to pick up on that later, I'll do that later. And I struggled with that. And of course, other things come along, other good opportunities, which are more interesting, more appealing. You threw yourself into them, and that backlog of doing your accounting or whatever got longer and longer. I had again been trying to perhaps answer your question. I know when I started out, I really did one of three things. I either did the marketing, which I did a lot of, getting out and telling people what I was doing. I either then did the actual work that paid the bills, or I did the administration. So I really only had three things to do, either the business development, the actual doing of the work, or all the other stuff, the admin, getting the computers, printers that break down or whatever, and needing to be fixed. And I found that when I did A, I was sitting there thinking I should be doing B. And when I was doing B, I was sitting there thinking I should be doing C. And then I struggled to get that balance correct between the three things that I was doing. That was my situation. I actually think that's pretty true of most other businesses.
So, look, what would you say to anyone out there who's looking to, whether it's a business format or an idea, or they're looking to become a speaker or whatever it may be, just what would be your advice to them?
Right. So, again, get out there, test the waters. I probably would go and get to know those groups and make sure that, one, they're the right group. I do think a lot of us go to events and we're not quite sure why we're going to those events. And it really does come back to, is it because the people there are the sort of people who are likely to become my clients or my referrers? So be quite selective in which events you go to.
Strategic.
Well, that's true. Again, I'm such a hypocrite though, Magnus. I actually go because I just enjoy it. And look, at my age, I guess I'm a bit fortunate I can do that. But so some of the events I go to, I will never see an ideal client there, but I actually just enjoy it. Invariably, Ben, they have a speaker, and invariably they are looking for other speakers. It could be a podcast such as this. I was delighted when you guys asked, or Ben asked, would I be interested in doing this? And take those opportunities and tell your story. And so I hope there's a degree of consistency coming through in some of my answers. It's really, a lot of it's not Einstein stuff. It's just really basic. So you be a bit thoughtful about which events you go to. Another mistake I've seen people do, say two people from the one firm go to an event. Have you noticed how they invariably sit at the same table?
Yep, and they stand there and talk to each other.
And they talk to each other. How ridiculous. I mean, we know each other. I'm not likely to engage your services. He or she is not likely to engage mine. Go there to the event. Go your separate ways. Work the room. Walk around. Talk to people. Introduce yourself. Ask them about themselves. And the other thing we do is, if you're not from the same firm, but we go to an event, and again, God, I'm so guilty of all of these things, Magnus. I go to an event and I spot people I know, and they know me, and they know what I do, and I know what they do. But what do? We gravitate towards the people we know. So trying to break that mold, Ben, I would encourage people, go there and go and introduce yourself to new people as well. I'm not saying neglect the ones you already know, but don't spend 90% of the night talking to people you already knew.
Yep. I'll just add to that, because again done exactly the same thing, but going up to the person, you spot someone across the room, you know that person, invariably they're talking to somebody else. So then you can wander over and then you already know and you automatically get introduced, which is a little bit less awkward because I know a lot of people aren't very confident to be able just to walk up to a complete stranger and just start introducing themselves and asking about the other person. But yeah, that's an angle.
And in fact, last week I was at an event. It was financial services, and there were about 20 people there. There were about 19 males and one woman. And I noticed that the woman was just standing on her own. And I was chatting to a couple of blokes who I'd only just met. So, and look, I'm fortunate and I'm quite front-footed about getting out there, quite relaxed about it. So I went and I said, come and join us and tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself. And she came in and joined the conversation, and we spent the rest of the evening chatting, learning about each other, and it happened very naturally. Equally, if I'm that person who's there on my own and I don't know anybody, I'd be, hopefully you've got enough confidence to be able to go up to, say, two people who are speaking and say, would you mind if I joined you? So again, trying to answer your question, Ben, you do have to be a little bit front-footed. A
little bit bold.
Yeah, but I think so long as you do it in a pleasant way and you're not arrogant about it, and you listen and you ask people questions about them as opposed to let me tell you about myself. Be interested in other people, find out about them. And again, that brings me back to comments we made earlier in the podcast. It will create other opportunities.
Yep. What about AI? That's obviously so heavily talked about at the moment. Where do you see opportunities for founders with the introduction of AI?
Right. Well, acknowledgement. One of my areas that I'm not good at is technology. I'm fortunate that I work with a lot of younger people who make me look a lot better than I really am, and I'm okay with that. I'm pretty relaxed about that. And they are right into it. And our daughter recently took me aside and started to get me set up on Copilot. I've attended so many AI webinars, presentations. I know almost everything about AI, but I can't do any of it myself. And there is something in me, it's an impediment in me, that's a bit like, oh God, where do I begin? And as I say, my daughter, she's kind of got me underway. 2026 is coming up. It sounds like it's a good time for me to actually get in there and do. I look and these presentations I attend, and in fact I'm attending one tonight, and they're definitely touching on what AI can do. I know it's all about the quality of the prompts. I know about hallucinations, that you've got to watch it. I don't think it will ever replace humans. It will definitely take us to a quality that we perhaps previously weren't achieving. But I think you always need to check what the outcomes are. And we've had recent examples in the news about where some very prestigious professional service firms, accounting firms in fact, didn't do that, and what was sent to the client was rubbish. So again, assume nothing.
That unfortunately happens all the time. It happened before AI. Don't get me started on the legal industry that do the same thing. So.
But I think what you've got to do there is, before you send something off, a response to a client, surely you owe it to the client to actually read it line by line and make sure, is this actually saying what I want it and need it to say, as opposed to just skimming it and thinking, oh yeah, that looks pretty good.
Agreed. Quick fire question time. Are you ready?
Here we go.
I know, actually, these quick fires, they unsettled me even more. And in fact...
well, that's because you've got to get short answers. No
yes,
long answers.
I know.
No.
This doesn't sound like me. I'm not sure we're going to do well here, Magnus.
I have faith in you. What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Surround yourself with the right people.
Fastest way to kill a business?
Cash flow, or lack of control over cash flow, lack of sales.
Name one habit that you see in every successful entrepreneur.
Passion, enthusiasm.
Smartest person you've sat in a room with?
Haven't sat in the room with him, but I enjoy reading his posts and is Simon Sinek. But in a more realistic answer, I would, as I said before, I'm fortunate. I work with a lot of young people. I know lots of young people. I learn so much from them. And that kind of feeds back to the question about technology and AI, what it can do. I love learning from them. And hopefully I can add something in terms of sage advice and multiple mistakes.
What's the weakest excuse that you've ever heard but never accept?
Right. Yes, look, I know you're right. I know I need to do it, but just the time isn't quite right at the moment. And by the way, I still use that myself.
The biggest mistake people make when networking?
We touched on that before, mixing and dancing with themselves. Meet new people.
The first metric a business owner should check every morning?
Bank balance and yesterday's sales and today's expected sales.
One thing you wish everybody knew about strategy?
Leadership. If you have a team, involving everybody in the development of that plan, not only the development, but then the living of it, the implementation. I keep coming back to, it's the day-to-day living of it. It's not the words, it's the actual living of it each day you get up.
What's the most underrated skill in business growth?
Customer service, understanding what the customer, the client wants.
What's the first thing you notice when you meet someone?
Their energy, their spontaneity, their naturalness. I'm a great believer in being natural. I just think people get so screwed up these days trying to be somebody else. Just be yourself. And I think that's so spottable.
A simple daily action that you think's had the greatest impact in your life?
Right. Well, waking up with enthusiasm, with a goal, with a purpose, and getting out of bed, and as you do, thinking, right, today, yep, I'm going to crunch that.
What's the most powerful question a founder can ask themselves each week?
Why am I doing this? And is it serving me?
Last question. What's the best advice you can leave with our audience?
Always do the right thing. Be a good human being. Volunteer. Do something that will surprise somebody, perhaps for nothing, for no cost at all.
What a great way to finish. Thank you so much for your energy, Paul, for your enthusiasm, and for all of your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Magnus. Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, mate, for coming on the show.
That's good. Thanks very much.